Look, this Immigration Minister, Andrew Giles, he's in a world of pain. He's gone from bad to worse and now to calamitous. He should have been sacked already and he stumbles on, but his time might be just about up after the drone issue blew up in his face today. Now, you know the background on all this. Giles stuffed up the High Court case and then prematurely released 150 foreign criminals into the community without proper visa conditions or with surveillance. Since then, at least 28 of these criminals have been charged with fresh offences and other Australians have been hurt, and the minister hasn't done much except tell us that he's trying hard. And then there's been this Direction 99 debacle, a direction put in place by Giles with the specific intention of making it harder for Australia to deport foreign criminals. That was the specific intention of the new direction, to do New Zealand a favour by making it easier for foreign criminals to stay here rather than be deported. Well, apart from doing the Kiwis a favour, it's allowed at least 80 other convicted criminals who aren't Australian citizens to stay here rather than be deported to a whole range of countries. And today, after weeks of controversy, the minister claims he's onto the problem because he's recently cancelled 30 visas. How pathetic. He's been caught out by the opposition and only now, in response to public outrage, does he try to stop foreign criminals staying here. Negligent, hopeless. But it gets worse with this bloke. It got a lot worse for him today. Remember, this is what Giles told Kieran Gilbert here on Sky News last week.
There is $250 million that we've invested in supporting our law enforcement agencies to enforce that. And that's enabled things like using drones to keep track of these people.
Using drones to keep track of these foreign criminals let loose in our community. Now, you didn't have to be Einstein to work out that was dross. I mean, here's what I said straight afterwards the same day. Drones. Really, we have drones 24/7 above the murderers and the sex offenders? I hardly think so. Give us a break, Minister. Hey, but what would I know? I mean, after all, the Prime Minister today suggested that Sky News isn't to be trusted.
Sky News occasionally don't get things right. I know they'll come. Usually it's at night.
But of course, Prime Minister, apparently we'd do better to listen to you and your ministers. Ministers like Giles and his drone claim and his colleague backing him up yesterday.
Drones do form part of the operation that's involved in monitoring those offenders, but it's being done in an operational sense like that.
Oh, yes, using drones to keep an eye on the criminals the government had freed from detention. Absolute dross, because there are no drones. They're not using drones, and Giles had to admit that today.
Last week, in an interview on Sky News, I did state that Operation Aegis was using drones. I relied on information provided by my department at the time, which has since been clarified.
Clarified? This bloke has scarified himself. He's been spinning nonsense, telling porkies. His office confirmed the lie. He had a ministerial colleague back up his lie in an interview. This minister said they were using drones.
And that's enabled things like using drones to keep track of these people.
But they're not. And Albanese has the gall to say this.
Sky News occasionally don't get things right. I know they'll come. Usually it's at night.
Well, Prime Minister, I for one picked this one right. You and your ministers could do with a bit of common sense yourselves and a bit of transparency, because you and your government have been caught with your drones down. This mob lectures us, but they don't know what they're doing. They're letting foreign criminals stay here instead of deporting them to the countries in which they are citizens. That's terrific for the criminals, but how good do you reckon it is for law-abiding Australians? I reckon most law-abiding Australians would like to deport Andrew Giles. Instead, the Prime Minister lets this bloke drone on, if you'll pardon the pun, and I expect he's going to crash to ground pretty soon.